All right, thank you for staying with Kenya's Choice 2022. Our wall-to-wall coverage continues here until the final days, all through to the Supreme Court hearing, if there will be one, all through to the swearing in, all through to governance through that 5 years, all right? So this is where we keep it, Citizen TV. So let me introduce my guest real quick. Dr. Duncan Ojwang is here. He's the Dean School of Law at the African Nazarene and also a human rights activist. Thank you so much for making time.
Good morning, thank you.
We have Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch. Asante sana for making time.
Shukran.
We're still waiting for Wanjiru Gikonyo, National Coordinator, TISA, which is the Institute of Social Accountability. When she comes in, we'll just rope her into the conversation. But Kevin, I'll start with you. We were with you here.
Yes.
When the process of voting was happening, then the counting and everything. At the end of it all, what is your assessment of how IEBC performed?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Trevor and team. IEBC did a sterling job in terms of the processing up to the point of the tallying the results, and probably even partly at the National Tallying Center, despite the challenges that they had. And in my view, looking at the degree of preparedness, right from the joint multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder engagement processes, all the way into ensuring that there is effective and proper voter education, to the levels of even opening up the various aspects based on our experiences. And you realize that in 2017, particularly the Supreme Court petition, aspects of the server and quests and of course the push for people to be engaged in the kind of voting, tallying, and the end results of what was contained in the server. I think looking at the degree and the manner in which the IEBC opened up this process and even enabled party agents, observers, right from the ward level all the way to the constituency, to the county, and even at the National Tallying Center. And we had the, of course, the commissioner saying the papers are there, the results are with you there. So in my view, an assessment of IEBC on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give them probably a 7 out of 10, 70%. Yes, of course, now they have serious challenges based on their own internal mechanisms, administrative issues, and how they plan to move forward in terms of looking at the degree of conflicts which are there. But I believe that now that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance has made some bit of processing of Supreme Court petition, we hope that part of that process will help us understand exactly what the IEBC commissioners and even that particular team are going through. All right. Dr. Juang, your assessment of IEBC's performance this far?
So far, you know, being a teacher and a social science, I never give 100% because that to any answer, because it is saying you can never improve. But I think they have done much better. They have met or exceeded most of our expectations. I see the international observers generally who came to help the process, to check the integrity, left saying we have benchmarked with Kenya. It can never be perfect, does not need to be perfect. I'm more interested in to what extent did they try implement the 2017 Supreme Court ruling in terms of no, Chebukati, you have come here telling us you have corrected 34A with 34B. Impossible. Election is 34A. This is the DNA of any election. The rest, we can argue about calculation, tabulation, let us catch heart attack. But we must get the 34A right. He did. Access the portal. Remember the call even to the media to access the portal. Get your tallying on. So is the election verifiable, accountable, simple? I spent the 4 days in Bomas. I thought it was a very boring process because really when you are the floor, all the agents were there, each one with the blue light, first checking each 34A for the 9 I think 9 security features before we even tally or anything. So you'll just see the lights running through, checking those major things. Then once it is found this is the original Form 34A, then we get to the tally. And you know that they kept reiterating that we cannot change, we cannot the mistake, but we cannot alter the 34As. And I'm glad the very few, if there's any, minimal problems with the 34As. So overall, I can say that IBC at least have put a dent to the idea of not having integrity. They have crossed that path. They have run a better, superior election. Is it perfect? No. Does it need to be perfect? Probably not. Thank you.
So out of 10, what is your score?
Out of 10, I will give them 8.
8?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's a lot.
Yeah, but then comes the quagmire, Kevin.
Yeah.
Commissioners on one side, 4 of them, led by Juliana Cherera, Justice Abonyo, Irene Masit, Francis Wanderi. They say, at the end of it all, there was an opaqueness in terms of the tally. And then Chebukati gives a rejoinder that they wanted to force a rerun. So what do you make of that stalemate between the commissioners, and what is the impact of that stalemate on the integrity of the election?
That stalemate actually dents the integrity of the commission. And to the extent that this is happening on the final, almost the final day, because either way, IBC still had a few hours to meet the constitutional threshold of 7 days. And to the degree that at the tail end of it, when we're expecting that they are going to all stand there and be able to give us a unanimous decision, because, Trevor, that is really the expectation of the Constitution and also the other laws that support the Constitution. So you look at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commissions Act, what does it say about decision making? You look at the Elections Act, what does it say about the chair of the commission alongside being the national returning officer of the commission? All these things indicate that the commission is supposed to be working as a team. The commission is supposed to be enhancing collective social responsibility. The commission is supposed to be underscoring what we call, what I would probably call corporate responsibility, so that one commission's decision, actually, if you met one commissioner in Taita Taveta over the same decision that they want to make, and you also meet another commissioner in Lamu, the expectation is that each of them and both of them should be able to speak the same thing on that particular concern. And to the extent that they differ, then the laws that we are referring to indicate that you undertake a vote, and that is partly why there are 7 of them, so that there is no point, there is no particular point in time when there will be a tie, you know. So if there is a tie, then one of them has the opportunity to provide a majority vote, so that it is 4 out of 3. Now, Trevor, on this issue, 4 of them are not with the commission chair, which presents the question around what is the role of the IEBC commissioners at the National Tallying Center, to the extent of, say, a subject matter like the chairman being a returning officer, the national returning officer. So what would be all these other commissioners be doing as they wait for the chair to be able to make this announcement? It is good that these conflicts are happening, and so that we are able to open up the IEBC. I remember that these 4 commissioners are more or less the new ones that came up after the other 4 resigned or left their responsibilities at the commission. And so then begs the question, what is the space of teamwork within the commission? Would there be possibilities that the 3 who had been there earlier on continued with a degree of either impunity or status quo, or the desire to lock all these other new people outside, the same way it would happen in a high school or in a campus? If you are a fresher, you are a fresher. And you will have to work so hard to be able to meet up to the level of the other oldies or the other old boys or other old girls. So how then they undertake issues around teamwork whether there have been attempts to do capacity building and also team building, whether they have been able to get technical assistance and support. I know, for instance, from civil society perspective, that there has been lots of investments, Trevor, from various friends of Kenya and the donor community to work with IEBC to offer technical assistance, organize so many retreats so that they can be able to speak together from one particular perspective. And if there is a difference, then they actually do what is required by Constitution and their laws, which is to undertake a vote. So these diversions, in my view, present a very serious dent to their integrity, which takes us to the second issue about the validity of the results that, one, were being read from the constituencies, because most of them actually read part of those results from the constituencies. And then number two is the verifiability of the presidential tally, because that's probably where most of them have actually had issues. So we hope that Azimio, again, as I said earlier on, will be able to beat their threat to go to court, and that some of these commissioners, if not 4 of them, would actually want to be amicus into the case, swear an affidavit, and help us really understand what is happening right inside the commission.
Yeah, Dr. Juang, is it necessary for them to speak with one voice? Is it necessary for them to be unanimous? Because now Kenyans are left in a situation where they're wondering who is fooling who here.
Right. Of course, especially after Chebukati came with counter, isn't it? Yeah. Of course, you know, things were okay until the last day. I think that was the last day, yeah. The few last hours. Cities, time for light and darkness at the same time, with the 4 commissioners coming out to say there is opaqueness and leaving it there, and then coming the next day to fill up what was actually opaque, to give a little flesh to that. Of course, with a little bit of the wrong mathematics that was quickly dismissed by not even mathematician. Anybody who could put hand on a nini. So, and you know, they say if you can lie on one thing, then maybe you can lie on other things. But so that again wounded them a little bit because it was their presser. They came when they were ready. They spoke, and then here they said something about those numbers that if this figure of 144,000 could have swayed, things would have been different. That is the relevance and the meaning and the logic of that 0.01%, that things would have been different. I took it to mean that the winner barely scrapped through, and therefore we will have been talking of rerun. So when Chebukati comes in the next day and say they wanted a rerun, then I'm not going even beyond, but I'm saying there's a little bit of similar story here. These numbers will have made a difference. Could it be that in that conference room they did this wrong calculation and said, according to this calculation, there should be a rerun, and maybe they were overruled, or they overruled each other, and they left, because you know they were there up to last night. It was almost in a hush, which also show how genuine it was. It wasn't plotted, you see what I'm saying? Because it could have been executed a little better. So it is simply, it shows how sincere they were. We have a problem here. Then we are walking out. Then they come with the numbers. Then Chebukati is saying, exactly, we had that conversation. They were asking for a rerun. Probably based on that number, but that number was so far was erroneous. Beyond that, I think that beyond that, what is due to each commissioner is by law. So you cannot say, because the 4 of us have voted that Chebukati, you give so-and-so your car. What you can ask is what you are entitled to by law. So it cannot just be majority for majority's sake. Consider a situation where they conduct an election, and then if it is, because I don't believe it's a decision before the commission, where they vote, because there is returning officer, and his roles is very clear. But even assuming it is, then they say here are the results. Who votes for number 1?
They raise them.
2 votes. Who vote for number 2? All of you. So then at that point, do they now go and announce number 2? What is, even assuming that is a commission decision, what was the purpose of 34A? What was the purpose of the people voting under Article 38 and choosing their leaders? So what could this vote cause them to call in an election regardless of what the numbers are? And so because what you will expect, and that is why I give them their best case, that when they said we were not shown the last tally, then what you'll expect is not to go to court and say only that I wasn't shown. You're saying then upon them being read, I realized why he was not showing me. It is because he had changed them, or they were wrong. Then that become a full story. And that is where then the issue of opaqueness, then the next day, the issue of 0.01% makes sense, that this is now a little bit of full story. Then you realize that the numbers fell, or that calculation of 142,000. You know, I'm obsessed with the number 144 in Revelation. As a Seventh-day Adventist, we always talk of the 144,000 will make it. Yeah. It means with 2,000. The 142,000, with the 142,000 was debunked by any other Kenyan. And so then, could there be a situation of them realizing that we are human, we made a mistake? But even then, who has the role? You know, there is a constituency returning officer. Do we have 2 returning officers? Who announces this thing? How far did they go to the process? And how far is this disagreement eating to the results? Because it is one thing if you have done your work, then you go to the parking lot and you have your fight. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Of course, it was still about the process. But still, to what extent does it eat into the issue of the conducting of election, or we have been carrying each other all along? Yeah. And then at the critical hour, we have kind of disagreed. Thank you.
And Wanjiru Gikonyo is now joining us. She's the National Coordinator at TISA, which is the Institute of Social Accountability. Thank you for making time, Wanjiru. We were talking about the conduct of the commissioners. Now there's an absolute stalemate. Initially, there was the 4 who dissented and said there was an opaqueness when it comes to the declaration of the final tally. Now the chairperson comes out and says they wanted to force a runoff. So what do you make of the conduct of those commissioners, including the chairperson? And going forward, should we be seeking some sort of unanimity in terms of voice, or should this be allowed to continue? Because then how does it dent the integrity of the poll?
Good morning, Trevor, Prof. Kevin. Apologies, I'm joining you slightly late. Yes, and I agree with Prof. It's right now, we are looking at the credibility, verifiability of the results. That is about the numbers. Do we trust the numbers? And it is really maybe the issue about how the IBC engages and conducts itself is a separate issue. And given what the law says, the mandate of the National Returning Officer is vis-a-vis the Commission, there may be some gray areas. And that is why it's important that this process then goes to court. So I would say that it's about the numbers. The result was announced in line with the law. And if you listen to the legal interpretations coming out, they are divided in terms of how the IBC conducts it, how decisions, maybe how the conduct is made, but it's clear who makes the announcement. So those gray areas are the reason we have litigation. And the Supreme Court is going to help us decipher this situation with more clarity. But my expectation is that they will deal with the result in terms of the numbers. Was there due process at the polling station? They will look at the Form 34A. Can we trust that these results reflect the will of the people? Was there due process followed? At the point where this was then transmitted to bombers, we know we waited for some 4 or 5 days as verification took place. And we're expecting, as you verify these results by constituency, you are actually, whatever number comes out, has already been verified. So this looks like the governance style, what is expected. It doesn't look, as Prof has very well said, that it impacted the results. So we expect the evidence brought forward to demonstrate either there were material defects in the voter register, and these material defects then translated into the tally at the constituency, because the national tally is based on the constituency tally, the 34A. So if there is a discrepancy, then we can talk about a material defect. Otherwise, then we are saying, how should Chebukati conduct himself? The last point I want to make is we are operating in a very low trust environment. Unfortunately, we've seen becoming an officer of the IBC in any of the elections is a very hazardous job. We've seen 2 deaths, and those we know are directly linked to the process. People who are trying to circumvent and compromise the process, and when they didn't comply, we saw that they were eliminated by political interests. So we can imagine there was equally pressure on Chebukati. And at some point, and we know this from 2017, we know this from 2013, where the political actors are trying to interfere. So at some point, as the person responsible, you can isolate yourself to make the decision, interrogate yourself, make a decision, and make an announcement. So we are going to see, based on the evidence brought forward, who the actors were, what the forces were, and if this is a genuine issue of concern, or whether it is just more politics, because nobody wants to lose. And they will do everything they can to disparage the situation. So for the 4 IBC officers, they better have some strong evidence. Otherwise, it will be their credibility on the dock. With the, if you recall, in 2007, when we had the Kriegler Commission, again, during the preparation of the report, some of the members of the commission felt they could not endorse some aspects of the report. What did they do? They took part in the process. They did make their announcement, but they were recorded on record that they dissented to some aspects of that report. But they did try and disrupt the entire process, did not try to stop the release of the report, because there is a national good here. There is a process that has been, has an A to Z. So if you don't agree with points X and Y, but you're in agreement with everything else, and X and Y do not undermine the veracity of the report, there is a way to conduct yourself. So I think the 4 may come short in this instance if they do not provide evidence. Of course, if they do, again, the court will be the one to judge.
Yeah, but Kevin, it is this evidence, and I'll also come to Dr. Ojuang to hear about this, the kind of evidence that we are talking about here. Because they did not give specific numbers. Of course, the numbers that they gave were disputed when it comes to calculus and mathematics 101. But they did not say that, you see, the number they gave is 7.1 for DP Ruto and 6.9. We found it was 7.3 and 6.8. That did not happen. Sure. All they said was that we did not have access to the back end, a back end of which nobody described what it was like. So going forward, how should these commissioners behave simply so that Kenyans are not left in a limbo where they don't know who to believe, who to trust, and who not to trust?
Trevor, you're asking me a very, very difficult question, because when these commissioners were actually, when they had just been sworn in, I was one of the few Kenyans who were invited by the special committee that was put in place to help them understand the issues that Kenyans have with the elections. And this was happening close by here at Serena. And I remember, as a member of the civil society, I asked them, would there be circumstances within which this committee would condone resignations of commissioners without proper explanation to Kenyans? And I remember the chair of that committee indicated that our terms of references are very clear. These individuals are going to be sworn in and they undertake an oath. Now, I left the room asking myself, so what is this oath? When individuals are given spaces in the commission and they can easily walk away. You go to New York and you tell us on Twitter that I have left and bye-bye. What is the responsibility of a commissioner vis-a-vis the services that Kenyans expect you to deliver to them? So in response to that, I see a number of things. One, despite the issues around the numbers, because that is really dependent on the polling station tallies. That is how tight the IEBC tried to make this election. That if you get it right at the polling station, you will automatically get it right with the forms and ultimately at the National Tallying Center. Unless there is going to be interference at the polling station, and that means you have to compromise almost everybody, including the agents, the observers, the media. It was quite a watertight, and we were observers, and I've kept showing people this report because it shows a step-by-step mechanism of the kind of checklist that as an organization we had looking at the manner in which IEBC was undertaking itself. So the first thing is for them to be able to prove that in a few areas, including the 20 constituencies that they are saying, as at the time the results were being mentioned, the tallies had not been done. The battle to fight is actually on their doorsteps. So the aspects around the numbers and their individual responsibility vis-a-vis being commissioners, read side by side, juxtaposed by the oath of office which they swore. Number two, Trevor, how do we hold people accountable? The 22.1 million Kenyans who had trust in IEBC, when commissioners walk out of their responsibility, are there mechanisms through which Kenyans can be able to actually hold them to account? Because that is one of the things I am looking forward to listening to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance petition, if they actually lodge it at the Supreme Court and the process goes in until the end of it. Is there an opportunity for a voter to be enjoined to ask a question around, how am I supposed to ask a commissioner who messes up an election to repay taxpayers' monies? Are there recall and recourse concerns around the degree of expenses that we incur? Number three, when you apply to be a commissioner, and as Wanjiru said, I think this should be one of the, working as a commissioner in the IEBC should be termed as one of the 1,000 reasons, I mean, ways to die in Kenya, because as a public servant or a state officer, you really walk in between, thin lines of beyond your roles and responsibilities, but also the expectations of Kenyans. But what does that mean when you lay your life, the lives of your family members, to be able to come forward and engage as an IEBC commissioner? Where is your individual responsibility as a Kenyan to the Kenyan people? And number two, your individual responsibility as a commissioner that is supposed to adjudicate and implement certain responsibilities. So even as we look forward to the case and how it's going to be adjudicated, it will be difficult, Trevor, to look at the value add for these commissioners against the kind of processes that we have set in the past. I don't think that we have set a very good record in terms of holding commissioners accountable. Because even as we talk about the death of Musando, and today we are talking about Mr. Musyoka, the question is, who killed Musando? Now, this is a criminal issue, yeah, because this is murder. What is the involvement of all the other state agents, including DCI in the investigations, the prosecutions, and the communication elements? Because I don't think IEBC has also come out very well in terms of its public engagement, public communication. Beyond the press statement, what are the family members of these officers who work at the commission? I remember the commission is both the commission and the secretariat. with hundreds of thousands of people working for them. How do they feel to the extent that now 2 counties are not going to vote? The election, the by-election has been called off indefinitely because the lives of staff are under a threat. So it's going to be a difficult one, Trevor. That's why I said it's a difficult question. Yeah. But I'm hoping that all the processes that are going to be coming forth are going to help us unravel and deal with a number of these questions. Yeah,
Wanjiru, I see you want to jump in before I bring in Dr.
Yes, I was just agreeing with Kevin on the issue of, the conduct of these officers and this issue of assassination. And I wanted to add there, because it's not just murder, it's an assassination because there is a political end. Yeah. Why haven't these investigations been concluded? What are the repercussions? Because we saw, for instance, in Wajir, that the issues around that election, the member of National Assembly, started even prior, even on the day. And that particular, in one of the polling stations, in fact, the poll had to be delayed. Yes. So you see that there is political interest. Why are our security agencies not able to investigate and bring to book those who are responsible, including those political interests? So we look at Msando, we now look at 2 additional deaths, and to my mind, these are some of the underlying concerns that can have an impact on the electoral result. So we shouldn't just brush it aside and say, well, we had a good election, it was very fair and transparent, because we are seeing an increase in criminality. It was Msando last time, there are 2 this time, and we don't know how much intimidation was there. So we need investigations around this. Then I would just maybe differ with Kevin in terms of the resignations of public officers, because much as you take an oath to uphold the integrity of the office and to discharge your duties without favor, if it comes to a point where you recognize that the process has been compromised and that your efforts to intervene have not been successful, resignation is a dignified option. And I would say when Commissioner Akombe, Dr. Akombe resigned around the 2017 election, she was, in fact, vindicated in so many ways, because the Supreme Court then annulled the election result, and some of the issues that she had said actually were found out in evidence. Even the chair, Chebukati himself, lamented and expressed concern with the amount of interference. We have to recognize that our electoral system continues to be weak. And the lesson from this has to be, we need to go back and look at how do we safeguard our elections? How do we safeguard those officers who give their time and now even their life for elections in Kenya? That should not be the case. So I would say there are a lot of reflections have come out from this election about the process, but also about the result and the choice of leaders, which I think we are going to be discussing today.
Yes. And Dr. Juang, what kind of evidence will the Azimio team be looking for as they head to the Supreme Court now? Because they haven't gone there yet. They have 7 days. The 7 days lapses on Monday. But what kind of evidence will the Supreme Court be relying on? Because the Supreme Court will rise above the politics of this whole shenanigans of who did what at what point. What kind of evidence should they be looking for?
Of course, we are waiting to see the smoking gun. The Supreme Court came with 2 tests, the qualitative and quantitative, where they say that it can also be about the process and not just about the numbers. Remember, in 2013, they were stuck with, is those anomalies, whatever, affect the numbers? In 2017, they were able to say that this constitution prescribe how an election should be conducted, fair, transparent, accountable, simple, verifiable. And so when we cannot ascertain that it has been conducted according to the constitution and the law, that is enough ground to set aside any pronouncement and then victory. And so they came with a standard which they were saying, could a reasonable person or a reasonable tribunal look at that process and say this election has been conducted by law. You cannot just put aside our laws and say I'm going to wing it and do it whichever way. And so there was a little bit of not beyond reasonable doubt, but also a little bit beyond 50%. So there is a standard or a threshold that is not too high, but it's also not anything goes. And any suspicion, any hunch is enough to overturn election. I think 50+1 and above is not a very trivial standard. You must meet that. Then, of course, you know, law is a social science, and therefore it's about persuasion. Again, the openness, remember it was within last time, there was the ping pong about Chebukati blaming actually the CEO, right? The CEO, and saying, no, you let us down and all that. This time we have not seen much of that. But remember, within the first day, the demand was open the proverbial server, right? That you announce these results without receiving all the Form 34As. And when we asked you, you said you'll give it to us. You have not given them to us because you don't have them. And when they were brought, there were photocopies, there were carbon copy. Where are the original? Why will you bring a copy and not the original? The reason these things are expensive is for those 9 security features. We want to see them. And so the election, then they concluded, is not verifiable. We cannot verify. Now, this time, I told you that the 4 days, 5 days in Bomas, with all those features, that Chebukati will now start by saying, before we even go further, these are all the 34As, and this is the DNA of this election. We might even dispute 34B calculation, even 34C, but here, you cannot move far from here. So a little better. The server, remember I was saying there will be no server this time, the proverbial server, and so that equates to, there is a portal that everybody was invited to come in with a popcorn, with a calculator, and maybe a sedative if you need one, and do your maths. And that is why there is no mystery. Remember, there was no mystery. Throughout this process, which was really verification as I went, once in a while you'll hear somebody from the audience, not from the floor, saying, no. Remember the Azimio chief agent said, this is now a crime scene. But you are not giving the commission more to work with. If I come and say, this studio is now a crime scene, what has happened? You have murdered, you have stolen or kept stolen things. It must be more than just saying, these are crime scenes. And I kept pointing them to the polling station. The agent, the 34A, the portal, come ready and say what you are presenting here is not what our agent had at the Nini. So from the crime scene, once in a while they will kick drama, or some individual kick drama. They are not on the floor, but they will be there saying, why do you have 2 laptops? And then the police will come and get them away, and the camera will catch their eye, and then they will go to their house and sleep. And you're just saying, you're trying to manage somebody that here we are doing our best for you. I think that even these 4 commissioners probably realize that, you know, we need to kick a little drama and satisfy that we have done our best. As you can see, we are not in Bomas, yet you're adding the thing until last night. We are here. Because things are okay. But we'll talk to you tomorrow. I feel that this is so unfair. You cannot do this because you have realized maybe you couldn't help somebody and you just want to manage them.
But you see, when we go to the courts, this back and forth will not feature. That's what you're saying then. Because then the commissioners won't come and say, okay, we were not shown the back end. And Chebukati won't come and say they wanted a rerun because that's hearsay, right?
Right.
Court will not focus on any of these things.
Actually,
It's about evidence.
Yeah.
It is about evidence. And, you know, in terms of the portal, there was access. Not only was there the front end that the public could access, there was also back end where the political parties had the codes so that they could actually monitor the back end of the portal. So the question that has been, you know, in my mind is, how do you rig an election that appears to be very watertight? Because everything is about the Form 34A. So it's about the polling station. It's about that first tally. You'd have to compromise an entire polling station. So if a political party didn't put their agents there, and for some reason we find there were some, you know, I don't understand how that happened, you would still have to compromise the officers, the observers, you know, so many things would have to happen to compromise that 34A. Once a 34A is on the portal, the assumption then becomes everybody is monitoring this portal. Media houses are monitoring the portal, political parties are monitoring, and KOT is on the job, and they have been very effective. So how do you compromise? Of course, there is the issue of the register. Could there have been some machinations where there were that the IBC did not clean up the issues that were raised by KPMG? Did they not clean up? I think there were about 1 million votes that had various different names that had various. Was there a way to translate those names into ballots? So there are issues around that would have to be brought up as evidence. So for now, the question is, where is the evidence, and will it be enough to undermine the credibility of the vote? And as Prof says, there is also the issue of process, and the court will pronounce itself, because until the last minute, this process appeared to have been inclusive in terms of the IBC was engaging the political actors and their returning officer, and their officers were on the floor of the House and having this conversation, and the IBC as itself was monitoring the vote until the last day. So we wait to see.
And probably, you know, so as you know, Kenyans like imeibiwa. So as you talk of imeibiwa, if you'll have to say at what point, isn't it? It will be fair. At what point? So if you are the running mate, Martha Karua, you went to your stream, you voted, by 8 p.m., the results came out that the coalition that you are running against have, I don't know, 900. Your coalition in your stream has given you 36. Then you come to Nairobi, because it is the same results. And then you're saying somewhere here, things have been compromised. You wonder, surely it could have been easier to catch this in that polling station. You go to the president's polling station and you read the results. In Form 34A, they were in 6 copies. That is what they were meant to be, and each agent was given. And I think there's Mio side at about 200 and something, and the other side at about 300 and something. So you wonder, this must be gangster to come to the president's polling station and stream, not even polling station, compromise it right here, serve it, and force all the agents to sign and give them the copies, put it as photo, not even in writing, to the so-called server or portal, bring maybe kill all these other people and bring people who really resemble them, collect the same forms, and find the original. They are lucky enough to bring those same original to Bomas for the 4 days verification process. Then you are saying, then surely we were not dealing with fellow human beings.
Trevor, on this one, and the issue of evidence is going to be very, very critical, as my co-panelists have said, because it will be totally different from 2013, 2017, where we were being bombarded with heavy English and bamboozled with videos and recordings of voices. I've seen some videos going around of vehicles being caught in bushes with ballot papers and people saying these ones have been marked. It will be up to you to prove how whatever you have in videos and all those ballot papers contributed to the errors. And that is why the three of us are saying you will have to compromise the entire polling station. Remember that in this election, the IEBC presiding officer had what is called the PSD, the polling station diary. Anyone who got into any polling station had to sign that document as an electoral official. If you walked in with an observer badge, like some of us did, you had to sign. Even if you walked from this stream and went to the next one, the next class, you will be stopped by the door. The security guy will tell you, excuse me, sir, please talk to the polling, the presiding officer. Then you are given the PSD and you sign. Time in, time out, and you sign. So Azimio will have to indicate, and IEBC will bring the PSDs because they are physical documents like this and say, oh yeah, you are talking about Ukwala Primary School. Yeah. Okay. P.O. Ukwala, where is your PSD? Bring it. Who was your agent? Okay, Wanjiru Gikonyo. Did she sign? Sorry, the name is not there. It's a stranger. Knocked off. Next. Because that is as a result of the processes that we have gone through as a country. That we have gone through 2013 petition, we raised issues, very good. 2017, we raised issues, very good. Number two, I've seen people saying in Kiambu, for example, that there were over 1 million votes and some forms were lifted and agents signed without tallies being indicated. It will be up to you to prove that the same form you have online is the same one that was transmitted through KIMS and is the same one that was used at the National Tallying Center. Because that is how difficult it is going to be for anyone, including the MCS who have problems, who are going to petition this process, not just at the National Tallying Center for the presidential process. So evidence, 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 and there is not going to be issues about the server because we had a back office, which IEBC told us is going to collect all these transmitted forms, and then they are posted to the public gallery. Then there is something called the user interface, because it had about 2 different angles. The party agents had the codes to access the back office. So there is nothing like opaqueness. Did you have codes? Yes. What did you see? Okay. Can you print what you had? Yes. And this is what IEBC has. Do they tally? Where is the problem? That is why I think for me, as we seek towards strengthening our electoral reforms processes, it is important for us to talk about that transparency, accountability bit of it, but not to run away from the criminalities like the murder and the assassination issues. Because DCI will have to tell us that, by the way, the returning officer who was murdered is the one who had the back office log which was used, and they were killing him or her or him because they wanted this specific thing to help them alter the results. Otherwise, I don't think that there is actually a case.
All right, I have to take a quick break now. When we come back, we talk about leadership and integrity and the kind of leaders expected. You know, the Public Service Commission has affirmed that it is on course in its plans to manage the transition between the outgoing and the incoming administration. One of the things they've said is that the incoming administration will then have to decide if they're going to maintain the Chief Administrative Secretary position. We'll come to that in just a bit. Keep your views coming at Trevor Media at Citizen TV Kenya. This is Kenya's Choice 2022. See you in a bit.